My name is Jermaine, and today, as you'll see the title slide says, we are going to be talking all about sharp writing for digital platforms. This sits within the stream of communication and personal brand. So it's a bit miserable outside. I'm looking outside, I can see rain and stuff. So I'm going to start this presentation with some very, very good news. You are a great writer. Yes, even you. Because I think it's just down to the fact that you just need to know the techniques, the right tools to use, the right approaches to take. And some of you might be running platforms and you're thinking, I know I have to have some sort of content, some sort of written content on there. I just don't know where to start, or I don't know whether I'm good enough. Should I just hand it over to someone else to just do it for me? The problem is not everyone has deep pockets, especially in the sort of Christian space. There's a lot of underfunding. And so, but the good news is you can do your own content, which is a bit weird for me to say because people usually pay me to write content for them, but you can do a lot of great stuff yourself. And I'm going to tell you how you can do that in this presentation. So a bit about what we will cover over the next, I don't know, half an hour, 40 minutes or so. This is the agenda. So we will cover a bit about me, first of all. We will then answer the question, what is great written content? We will then answer the question, why great copywriting matters. And then we'll get into juicy bits of techniques and tools, the things that I personally use to write great content. Well, I hope it's great. People pay me money to do that. So yeah, I think I've not done too badly so far. So yeah. So a bit about me. I'm Jermaine. I am a professional writer. There's proof there because I have a pen and paper in my headshot. So that's me. My name is Jermaine Dallas. Three like main things about me. So I am a former journalist. I trained at university journalism school, and I went into journalism straight after uni. Well, after a very dodgy sales job, which I won't talk about now. And yeah, I was a journalist for a few years and did that. I worked on a bunch of magazines, both business and consumer magazines. And I was working up in Grimsby, and I was doing some stuff across all of Yorkshire and Lincolnshire, plus some international magazines that had readers all over the world. Now what I do is I am a senior copywriter at a PR agency. So the PR agency is called Edelman. I will talk a bit about what an Edelman is in a bit. But needless to say, I spend my days now writing stuff for some major brands, companies that you will have probably heard of, the likes of Samsung, HP, Microsoft, people like that, along as some smaller brands as well. And I am also a broadcaster. I have a radio show on Premier Gospel, which is sort of the biggest gospel music station in the country. And I've been doing that for about 5 and coming up to 6 years. Wow. Doesn't time fly? So that is me. So I promise you, I'll tell you about Edelman, and this is the slide that I have to include because these guys are the people who pay me money. So 3 things about Edelman. Edelman is it's in a short way, it is a PR company, although we now like to call ourselves a communications marketing agency. The reason is we don't just do the traditional PR comms anymore now. You have specialists like myself who do lots of different things. So whether it is copywriting or web design or video or statistics and insights, there's just so many specialisms that run alongside the traditional job of what a PR exec does. So I'm one of the specialists, and there's a lot of other specialists like me. Plus, there's all the usual people who do the media relations and that sort of stuff as well. So 3 things about Edelman. We earn trust. A lot of people know us for the fact that we do a really big survey. In fact, we're just releasing our annual one at the moment, the trust barometer, and it's tied to our thing of trust is really important, but you've got to earn it. So we aren't about just trying to buy our way into people's attention, although paid is an important element. We are very much about telling really good stories so that they are earned their way into the media or earned their way into the consumers and end businesses and things, into their psyche. So we're a big company, 6,000 people across 60 offices. So it's really good to be part of such a really big company with lots of resources, and we tell stories really well. So the way I do it is via written content, and I do podcasting as well. But there's loads of different ways, which we will talk about shortly. There's loads of different ways to tell really good stories. But the thing is to tell a story really, really well. And we work with and help companies from all over the world to tell really good stories. I remember once when I told someone that I worked in PR, and they said, "Don't PRs just lie?" And I was like, no, PRs are all about telling the truth, but telling the truth really well. And so that is what I do with my content. So what is a sort of like a PR guy doing here? Because there's a lot of skills that I do in my day-to-day job that are important in whatever content you are doing, especially for digital platforms. The digital world now, it's so multifaceted. There are so many aspects, so many different formats to consider, and each has their own discipline, each has their own techniques to master. But there are some thinking, some I don't know, some methods and things that you have to bear in mind to tell stories, whatever the platform. So here is a quote from the writer Maya Angelou, who says, "There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside of you." I know for a fact that you are sat on some really good stories. It might be the story about your business. It might be the story of your charity or your church or whatever the organization, or it might just be your personal story. And there's nothing worse than knowing that you're sat on a story but not getting it out there, because your story might help other people. And so get it out there, tell it. But make sure you use the techniques to tell your story really well, because if you don't tell your story, you won't get the visibility that you need to maybe grow a platform, or you won't get that visibility to help people, because people won't know you exist. People won't know that your story is out there. So put your story out there. So this is the section where the first of the three that we're going to talk about in the set. What is content? I think it's really important to tackle this first, because I'm going to show you some really good techniques and things to use that you can deploy later on. But before we do all stuff, I just want to talk about what great written content is. So there are lots of different types of content for digital platforms. Don't forget, this session is all about digital platforms. But if you just look at this list here, there's lots of different things, different ways that your content can exist. So website copy, newsletters, tracks, blog posts, social media posts, podcasts, scripts. There's lots of things. And to be honest, I write for all of these things, or have written for a lot of these things. And I'm agnostic in terms of the actual platform. I'm not the one to say this platform is better than that platform, because it just depends what you want to do, what you want to achieve, who you want to target, who you are, who your organization, your business, your church is. So I'm not, and to be honest, that bit is less important in what I'm going to talk about in this session today, really. Some people might be surprised that podcast scripts are in there, because people just think that's spoken content. But if you are a scripted podcast, then the way that you write it is really, really important. And a scripted podcasts are, they take a long time to put together, because writing long scripts, it's very detailed, but it has to be written in a way that is spoken, so the presenter doesn't sound like an automaton. So yeah, all of those things, really, really important formats, but all different and have their own unique things to bear in mind. So what does good writing do? Here is a list of the things that good writing does. First of all, it educates. So it tells someone something. It informs someone. Hopefully, if you want to educate someone, they will leave there knowing something that they didn't know before they started reading your content. It entertains. And my word, do we need entertainment in this day and age where there's a lot of doom and gloom. Sometimes you just want people to leave your content with a smile on their face, and that's fine. That's really good as well. It creates identity, to tell ourselves and others who we are. Really, really important, this one. We all have a story, a narrative about who we are as people, and really good writing communicates that really well. And that takes me to the next point, which is it creates community. We aren't just people who operate in isolation. No man is an island. And so good writing also creates community. You find those points of shared interest, those shared experiences, and good writing does that. Also, it elicits a reaction, whatever that reaction is. So it might be that after reading a piece of content, you might want someone to buy a product, or you might want someone to invest, or you might want someone to give to your organization or interact, or whatever the case may be. There's usually like a call to action that you will have somewhere in your article that drives someone to do something. So before you start doing any of this stuff in terms of creating content, you need to think, what do I actually want to do? And the honest truth is, your written content should want to do at least one of these things. If you don't do any of these things, the question then is, what is the point of your writing? Why are you writing anything? Because no one wants to write for the sake of it. So make sure that you are hitting one of these bullet points at least. What makes a good story? A few things, and these are things to bear in mind if you want to create some really good stuff that really engages people. These are the things that we might not realize we want or need when we are the people reading good content. But if you think about the last great film that you saw, you would apply all of these here as well. So good writing has a lot more in common than blockbuster movies than you might think. Good writing has characters. So the best stories are the ones that are about people, because people resonate with people. We are people orientated beings. We just love to read about other people, see their stories. So and I'll give you an example about how you can do that in a bit, but just know for now that if your story is about people, it will have a much better chance of resonating with others. Conflict. Now you might think, well, I'm a Christian, why do I want to talk about conflict? But it's really, if you look at it as a struggle, it's really a good device to use in writing, to have some sort of a struggle, people going up against something, people winning a battle that you might not have thought they would win, people who are overcoming something. That's a really good device to use when you're writing something that wants to be really engaging. Themes. So on the face value, an article might be just about something really basic, really simple, but a theme is much broader than what the story is about. It's something that is there's a wider story to tell, and if you just broaden it out in your thinking about what I want to do here, what the theme is, then you'll write something that is bigger than, you know, the story. the article itself in terms of what it's about. And structure as well is really, really important. If your article isn't structured well, you will lose the people reading it. So it could be about something that is the most amazing thing, but if you haven't told the story well, if you haven't structured it well, if you take too long to get to the point, whatever the case may be, you will lose people. So make sure your stories have a good beginning, middle, and an end. Really think about the anatomy of the piece that you're writing. Put it together in a way that attracts people and then keeps them right to the very end, especially if you're wanting to put a call to action at the end of the article. If people don't stay to the end of the article because your article's terrible, then they will never see the call to action. And on that point, by the way, you might want to include calls to action, not just in the end. You might, if you've got a long article especially, you might want to put a call to action in the middle of the article. So even if people, because people are time poor, let's be honest, and even if people don't get to the very end of the article, at least they will have seen your call to action because you had it earlier on as well as at the end. So here is an example of some really good digital content. Now, the majority of stuff that I write is long form content. So some of the stuff is like thousands of words, but it doesn't have to be an essay. So here is an example of really, really good, really strong short form content, which this one is done by Vibes of a Black Girl. Now, very, very good Twitter account run by Emma Sijuadi, who is also part of this this conference as well, by the way. Check out her talk. And she has grown her channel really, really quickly. And one of the reasons is because she has great content on her channel. And this isn't war and peace stuff. It's look at this, really, really simple but effective. It really resonates with people who are going through, in this instance, struggling with mental health. So this is like during the whole stuff with the pandemic, and so this was very needed content. So as you can see, this is just an Instagram post with some text on here, and it is on the carousel. So if you can just swipe across and really see things. But the point I'm just making here is that these little posts aren't long at all. So don't be intimidated about writing because you think you have to write lots of really, really long and complicated stuff. This stuff is really, really resonating with people, getting lots and lots of likes and visits and hits, and it's short form content that is done really, really well. Subject, also really important. Here is a quote from the writer Stephen King. He says this: find a subject you care about and which you in your heart feel others should care about. It is this genuine caring, not your games with language, which will be the most compelling and seductive element in your style. So the subject is a really important element, and this should come before you start to put pen to paper. What am I writing about here, and what do I want to achieve? So say, for example, you might say, I want to write an article about swimming. Okay, fair enough. Let's write an article about swimming. But why not think a bit deeper about your subject? Maybe you want to say why swimming is an enjoyable sport. That's a better subject than the original one of swimming. But I think can still do a bit better than that. For example, the swimming renaissance in Darlington. Okay, now that's got a sense of place. That's got some specifics in there, and it's digging a bit deeper. And deeper still is the people who took up swimming as a hobby and ended up coaching children with disabilities. So that is, remember earlier about how I talked about people like reading about people. It's a story of it's got that conflict in there, and it's a really good people-centric story. You won't always have a story like this to tell, but this is what you should be aiming for. Something that has a really good subject that is quite specific and really speaks to people, as opposed to boring generic content. So Why does great copywriting matter? A few reasons. Here's one, a really, really big one. That number there, 5.59 seconds. What can you do in that time? Not much. And that's the point. But researchers found that that is the amount of time that people spend reading written content on a website, which is a tiny, tiny amount. So how do you even capture people with such a small attention span? Now, what I'm not telling you is to just write content that can be read in 5.59 seconds. But what you should be doing is engaging people in those first 6 seconds so that they stay longer and read more content. So that is a huge reason why good copywriting matters. Another reason, people start to realize now that digital content is important. So everybody's doing it. That we've never had access to so much information, written content. And so digital platforms, the internet is just full of people trying to tell stories. How do you make yours stand out? You make yours stand out by writing really good content. So yeah, it's a problem, it's a struggle, it's a challenge. I'm not going to say problem, it's a challenge to stand out, but you have to do it because there's a lot of people in the same space competing for the attention of everyone. And as much as you try as you might, no one's going to add an extra hour in the day so that you can have more time to read content. So make sure that the content that you write is good. There's a company that everyone knows. So a major reason why you have to write strong content is because the way that Google is set up now. Back in the day, if you were a kebab shop in Leeds, all you had to do is say that we are a kebab shop in Leeds. And if you're looking for a kebab shop in Leeds, you just put kebab shop in Leeds and your website loads and loads of times. So if people were looking for a kebab shop in Leeds, they would go to your kebab shop in Leeds. But Google got a bit smart and realized, hang on a minute, people are just, that technique that people used to use is called keyword stuffing. And the thinking was that if you stuff your website with certain keywords, people would find it. Even if the content wasn't great, it would just go to the top of Google because those keywords are in there so many times. But Google has changed their algorithm now, and they're not rewarding people that do that. And in fact, they are putting those people down the search engine. And so the only way to get the attention of Google now is to write good content. And Google knows it's good content because other people start recommending it. You'll see links to your website on other people's websites. Or if people go to a website, they don't bounce back because they can see straight away that the content is rubbish. They stay there for long periods of time, and Google values that as well. If ever one picture just represented and said so much, is this one. We have been through a terrible, terrible year, and we are still in the grip of this global pandemic. People have needed community, people have needed connection, people have needed some encouragement, and really good digital content has helped people a lot. So when people are in a situation like this, content, especially really good, well-written content that connects people or gives people information or advice or whatever the case may be, or just gives them an outlet, connects them with other people, it's really, really good. And it's a really great example of why we need really good content. Another reason, and this is another very sort of 2020 picture. We remember following the death of George Floyd and the racism, systemic racism in the police, and problems with racism globally, not just in the States, the whole Black Lives Matter movement. A lot of what helped move that movement along, both in the US, in the UK, globally, is really great content. And when content is well written, it gets shared, it can help move the needle, it can help bring about change, bring about a difference in so many people. So don't underestimate the power of great written content in a much bigger movement that can achieve a lot. So now here is the techniques and tools section. So as I said earlier, I trained as a journalist, and some of the things that I was taught as a journalist, and if you have ever trained as a journalist, this graphic here will be very familiar to you. And yeah, you can deploy these sorts of tools to write like a journalist in order to tell a story very, very clearly, and by getting the main bits of information out there. So here what you see is the inverted pyramid. Really common device in journalist training. And here what you can see, it's very, very clear actually. If you want to tell a story, you have lots of facts and you're like, where do I even start? So the best place to start is the who, what, when, where, how, and why. The most newsworthy information at the top of the article. Now, I was always told your headline should be about 8 or 9 words, and your first sentence should be about 22, 23 words. And in those 23 words, you would cover off all of those who, where, what, why, how. So you do that straight away so people can see what your article is about from the very beginning. They don't have to read War and Peace to find out, oh, it's an article about this. Put that at the top so people know what they're getting themselves into, and they can make a decision whether they want to continue reading it or not. A bit further down is the important details. Don't bury them because you're trusting that people are going to read the full article, and as we've seen earlier, that might not be the case. So important details next, and then it's the other general bits of information that you put down afterwards. But yeah, these are do it in this order, cover these things in this order, and you won't go wrong. So other things about writing like a journalist, we've just spoken about the inverted pyramid. Short, impactful header. I am not a fan of clickbait, but a short, impactful header really does hit home. So spend some time thinking about the header and make sure that header represents what the article is about. Don't mislead people, but write something that really pulls people in. Who, where, what, why, how. And we've spoken about that as part of the inverted pyramid. Tell people the key facts, don't miss anything out, and seek the truth, which might sound funny to have a slide about writing like a journalist and have the word truth in here, but apparently journalists do tell the truth sometimes. So and you should too. There's a lot of misinformation, fake news, call it what you will, floating around the internet. There was throughout the whole of 2020 during the pandemic. And there's a lot of fake news going around about like vaccines and all of that sort of stuff as well. So it's really, really important that if you are wanting to tell a story, communicate something, that you tell the truth, seek the truth. Really, really important. So I'm not going to read this. It's a very, very long sentence, and deliberately so. It's really, really important that you are concise, that you don't ramble on and on and on and on. Long sentences are difficult to read. I'll say that again. Long sentences are difficult to read. Don't write long sentences. You will lose people. People will switch off and they will have difficulty understand what you're actually trying to communicate. Don't write sentences like that. So here are some writing essentials taken right out of my toolbox. Get to the point. Don't spend 10 paragraphs before you tell people what you're actually talking about, because otherwise, what were the first 9 paragraphs about? Probably nothing, and you could probably cut them. So get to the point straight away, and that's tied to that whole who, where, what, why, how, putting that in the first paragraph straight away. Know your audience and know what they want. This is important. You have to talk in a way that your audience understands. So in some instances, using slang terms might be okay, or terms that certain audiences might use. But say, for example, you are a church website and your website is full of words or jargon that people might understand if they are part of your church or just part of Christian circles in general. If the goal is for you to get new people to your church and get new eyes across who you are, you might not want to have all the specialist terms in there, because people might be like, I don't know what that means. So you're better off putting much simpler terms on there that everyone can understand. Make your call to action clear. If you want people to donate, if the whole point of your website is to get donations, make sure your call to action is very, very clear. Part of that is going to be web design, have massive buttons and put it in the right place. But some of it as well is going to be to do with how your content is written. Be active, not passive. Active sentences do really, really well, because you are saying, for example, the dog ate the bone is the best way to say it, rather than the bone was eaten by the dog. So active sentences tell stories better, more clearly, and you're much more able to get facts out there as well, because you're not hiding behind badly written sentences. Banish jargon, I've talked about that just now. Don't include it. If your writing isn't understood by everyone, you're in trouble, basically. And check for errors. See what I did there? Make sure that there are no spelling mistakes in the stuff you're writing. Get another person to read it and proofread it, and maybe go away, come back to it and find out, oh, there were mistakes in there that I didn't spot the first time around. Because what we tend to do is we tend to skip over our own mistakes because we know what we want to say. But when another person reads it, the mistakes you make will be glaringly obvious. Coming to the end of the presentation, by the way. So if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A panel and I will answer them in a second. So here is a really cool tool that I've stumbled across and it's really, really helped me, even for someone like me who's got years of experience in writing content for people. Hemingway app. So it's a website, just Google it, you'll find it. And it's a browser-based app, but they do have a desktop app as well, which is paid. And basically, you can just type your articles directly into there, and it tells you how well you are writing your articles. So if your sentence is slightly too long, it will make it yellow, and you can just try breaking it up or rewording that sentence to make it easier. If the sentence is red, it's way too long, so you have to do a bit more work to get rid of that red highlighting. And then just like complicated words are purple. So stuff like that, it just helps you to write really well by getting rid of common mistakes. And then you get in the top right hand corner, you'll see the readability score. And so the lower that number, the better. And that is related to what grade in American high school can understand your writing. So in this instance, a sixth grader would probably understand that writing. So it's a really, really good tool. I would recommend it. But if you're going to use the browser, the free browser version, I would recommend just copying and pasting it every so often between words, because if your browser refreshes and you lose the writing that you've just written, you'll be very, very disappointed and you'll be crying yourself to sleep. So don't do that. A quote from William Faulkner. Really, really important, this one. If you want to write well, you've got to read a lot, lots of different things. So he says this: read, read, read. Read everything, trash, classics, good and bad, and see how they do it. Just like a carpenter who works as an apprentice and studies the master. Read, you'll absorb it, and then write. I just don't understand people who write professionally even and don't read a lot. Or if they do read, they will only read a very small and narrow section of things, and so they don't really get that variety. So I try to read different things and different formats, like magazines, articles, scripts, blog posts, all that sort of stuff, just to try and get different techniques, see how other people do it. I learn new things as well, learning new words, new concepts, new ideas, new ways of thinking as well. Really, really important. So I would recommend, if you want to become a better writer, become a better reader, as in read and read a lot of it. That's me. Connect with me. I am a friendly person. I do not bite. I am on Instagram and Twitter using both of these usernames. The first handle is my professional, like sort of work one. My second one is related to music and the stuff I do with Premier Gospel. Both of those you can find me on Twitter and Instagram. So that is me. I hope you found that really interesting and helpful. And if you've got any questions at all, drop them in the Q&A and I'll answer them. Ooh, based on the Faulkner quote, which books have been pivotal in your writing journey? So there is a book, and it's not even the writing per se. The writing is super, super sharp, but it was a combination of the way it was written and the subject matter, which really, really helped me. It's a book called How to Be a Productivity Ninja. I can't remember offhand who it's by, but it's a book that changed my life. The way it was written, it was just really, really straightforward. And I just thought, why can't all people write books like this? It'd be so much easier, because sometimes you can, I think we've all been there, where you read an entire page of text in a book and you're like, hang on a minute, what have I just read? And was I just daydreaming, or was it just really, really poorly written text? Sometimes it's both. But that book, it was really well written, but it also really helped me. I work on a lot of different streams, and my main day job, I write for loads of different clients at the same time. So if I don't organize my day, it can be really, really difficult and challenging. So the subject matter as well, it really helped me to be really productive and get all of my ducks in a row. And a lot of the time when I was panicking because I had so much on it, I realized it wasn't that bad. That book gave me the tools to do things really well. Jan C said, would some of these ideas be good for sermon writing? Definitely. And I tell you why. So in terms of a sermon, you're getting a download from the Holy Spirit about what you should be saying to your congregations. Fair enough, that's great. However, I think with some sermons, the subject matter can be lost because it isn't clearly expressed or communicated, or there's not enough emphasis on the important points, or enough repetition in the key bits. So I would say that even if you're not using it to the actual deliver a sermon, but when you're planning a sermon and putting all the key bits there in the right way, using some of those techniques really helps to communicate to people what this sermon is going to be about. If you do that bit at the front, the who, where, what, why, how, this is what this sermon is about. This is what I want you to take home from this sermon I'm about to give you. So yeah, I think there's definitely some crossover, and I've never really thought about what I do as something that could lend itself to sermon writing in that respect. But I've delivered sermons, and maybe I've done this sort of stuff subconsciously. But yeah, definitely I would deploy some of those things. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining this. And I hope you got lots from it. And I hope there are things that you can take away. And I hope as a result of this, there's going to be some really cool and awesome websites that are being developed, or content or text written on websites going to be really good. In apps that are going to be really good. Instagram posts, blog posts, all of that sort of stuff. You now have the tools, I hope at least anyway, to do much better written content. So it all goes down to, it's all over to you now. I hand it over to you. Go and write some really, really good content. All the best. God bless you. And let's keep this conversation moving. You know where I am now on social media. Let's talk.